Hey Sainers, welcome to Saints TV. It's round 21 and the teams have just been announced. We're facing Essendon in another primetime game. We're playing Friday night, so it's one of those games that a lot of people are going to be watching with a little bit of interest just to see how we respond from basically our entire season and how it's been very poor. And also just, the changes that we're about to make. There's a few, I'll announce them now, but there's a few statements, there's a few surprises, and a couple that excite me. So let's quickly go through it, just to cover it off. Essendon are no change, so they're pretty comfortable with how they're travelling, which is fair enough. They're pushing for the 8. Basically, our next 3 games we're playing Essendon, Hawthorn, North, so all teams are around the same part of the ladder. So it kind of gives us a bit of a gauge on how we can improve and, where we want to be next year, and we want to be in those positions where these guys are. So as predicted, I said that I thought Patton's obviously debuting, which is great for him. He's been playing well all season. It's in the seconds, so good to see him come in. We've also got Rowan Marshall, who's coming in. Obviously, with Hickey being out and Battle being concussed, we needed to bring in some tools. And obviously, Louis Pearce is coming in for his first game, I think, for the year, which is great. Obviously, Ben Long has been out with a broken leg, so it's incredible that he's come back this quickly. He played for Sandy last week, and that's a big in for us because I think Ben Long, with his forward, his forward of centre pressure, his tackling, his tenacity, he kind of gives us a bit of buzz around the forward line. And with him and Gresham, I think that's really exciting. And with Marshall back as well, another tall, and Pearce maybe going forward when Marshall goes into the ruck, I'm super excited for that forward line to see how it works. And then you've got Jack Loney there, who's actually been pretty decent. And, as a team, we've been pretty poor, but him individually, can't even talk. He's been good. He kicked his 2 goals last week. He kicked a couple goals the week before, I think. And he's getting a bit more of the ball and pushing up the ground, so good on him. Bailey Rice is back, which is great. So we've got Webster back. We've got Bailey Rice back. He has had a good season, I think, and he's been dropped a couple of times and kind of surprisingly so, but he's back, and I hope he finishes out the season. But he's been pretty consistent. He's a tough nut. He puts his body on the line. That's all you want from a player in his position in the back line. We've got, lastly, and Ben Patton. So those are the changes. So the players coming out, Caulfield, who's been omitted, which I thought he was pretty average last week, and he just looked a bit out of sorts. Luke Dunstan's probably the big one. He's been omitted. We all talked about his disposal efficiency last week, and just his kicking was just way off. And, you could have dropped so many other players. It could have easily been Sinclair, because I thought Sinclair had his worst game almost for the club last week, and that was like a lot of other players. So for Dunstan, who's kind of been one of those players that, we've all talked about, he's like the Jack Newnes. He doesn't get dropped no matter what. Jack Newnes has survived again, but yeah, Dunstan a bit stiff, but, it had to be someone, and he's supposedly one of the leaders of the club, and he let himself down last week, so he's going to go back to Sandy and play. Hunter Clark omitted as well, so there's 3 big droppings there, and then the last 2, obviously the injuries that I mentioned. Tom Hickey out with a hamstring, and Josh Battle out with concussion. So we're playing Essendon. It's Friday night. It's a primetime game. It's going to be tricky. They're a fast team. They like to attack. But you never know. I mean, they're one of those teams that when they're on, they're probably, one of the best teams in the comp to play, to watch. And they're really exciting, with Jake Stringer, Danaher when he's playing. They've got Merritt. They've got Bell Chambers in the ruck. They've got Hurley in defence. They've got a number of different Sard, Devon Smith, all these players that they got in. So they're a good team. On paper, they're a very good team. Sometimes it doesn't quite click for them, and they lose games that they're expected to win, and other times they click and they play phenomenally and they just smash at anyone that they face. But I'm hoping we're playing an average Essendon team tomorrow night, because we've had a weird record against them. Sometimes we get them, like that game a couple of years ago that I posted during the week, and we beat it by 100 points. Other times we just can't get near them. Even when we're at our best and we faced them, they always gave us a bit of a problem just because of their pace. And we saw how the Bulldogs exposed us right through the middle, and that's the way Essendon plays. So if anything, the Bulldogs game should, basically give us a bit of a warm-up on how Essendon are going to play. And I said that in my review of the Bulldogs game. I said that we're playing Essendon, who were basically and I didn't mean this in the way that I now think about it, but I said that Essendon are Bulldogs but on steroids. So I didn't think, that drug saga thing didn't cross my mind, but now that I think about it, I'm like, that's actually a funny thing, and it kind of makes sense anyway. But that's basically the way they play, but Essendon play better, faster, cleaner. They've got a better forward line, better back line, better midfield. It's going to be a really big challenge for us, probably our hardest game leading into the end of the season. I think they're the hardest game, just the way they play and how it compares to us and how we're kind of static. We don't like playing fast teams. But I said that when we played Melbourne, and we played them fast and we beat them. So I don't know if, we've got Patton back. We're keeping Freeman. I was worried that maybe he'd be one to go, but I'm glad they're backing him for another week because he played really well last week at 19 disposals. Membry's got a bit more support in Marshall. Gresham's got a bit more support in Ben Long. The midfield's kind of been rejigged, and Bailey Rice comes in to start, just to strengthen the defence. So I'm not going. I would be silly to say that I'm going into this game with any sort of insane optimism. But yes, as Andrew has pointed out, the team is faster. It looks like we've gotten a bit taller, which is good. So going forward, we're not going to bomb it to, Membry and then Jade Gresham and Jack Loney and then they rebound. We've got a bit of a forward structure there. The midfield is essentially the same as last week, but they just got a lift. Like, in terms of this season, it's been a poor season, but if we don't show anything in the next 3 weeks, then you got to worry about the coaching and the players, just their want for getting better and playing for the club. But if they show something, I just want them to show. I guess it's not really a optional thing, is it? We don't want, if they show something, then there's something going on. But they must show something. After last week, they must show that they give a shit, that they want to tackle, they want to chase. And I said that. Sound like a broken record, but I say that every week. Just go out there and play fucking best. Give it everything. Who gives a shit if we can't make finals? Use the fact that Essendon could make finals if they beat us. Use that as incentive. Try and, for the next 3 weeks, we want to stop Essendon from making finals and make it hard for them. We want to stop Hawthorn from making top 4 or maybe top 8 and causing problems there. And we want to beat North and fuck them off and make sure they don't make the top 8. That should be the goal, to stop these teams. We want to be the top 8. We want to create some problems in the top 8. We can't make it, but we can control a lot of these teams' destinies in terms of where they finish at the end of the season and whether they go, into finals. So, if I was Richard, that's the approach I would take, is that, it may not be much for our ladder position, but we can cause some serious problems if we, get some points against these teams. So, you'd be silly to tip us. But, if there's a team that, goes from a massive high to a massive low very quickly, it's Essendon. And, they're downhill skiers, so that's what they're known to be. So they beat up on all the teams below them, but they struggle against the teams above them. But I'm hoping that in this case they don't beat up on us, because we've been beaten up a bit too much this season, and I wouldn't mind throwing some punches back and actually hitting the target. So if we can actually make the most of our inside 50s, kick straight, tackle, and just halt their pace, because they like to chip it around, but they like to move it. They chip it fast. Then we'll see. If we're in the game at halftime, I'll be very happy. If we're within 10 points at halftime, I think we're in with a chance. If they come out in the first quarter and they blow us away, it's just going to be same old. But I just want us to be in it at halftime. How many times have I said that can we just last 60 minutes of football and be in the game? Because that's something we haven't managed this season. A lot of scores at halftime, we've been either 30, 40 points down, and then, the end margin's always about the same. So the damage is always done early against us, so we just need to make sure that we're in it at halftime. Unlike last week, where we came out of the blocks and then we just stopped to a halt. We didn't move after that, but you got to find little bits of excitement. So I'm excited to go. I'm excited to see Ben Patton. I'm excited to see Nathan Freeman again. Ben Long back. It's going to be great to see him back. Bailey Rice get another go. Louis Pearce get a go. Marshall in the forward line with Membry to see how they work together. Yeah, and it's Friday night. It's the footy. You got to enjoy it, and let's get a crowd there. I know Essendon fans will turn out because they think they've got the game in the bag. I'm going with an Essendon fan as well, a mate from work, so he'll probably be giving me shit the entire time, unless we're winning. So we'll see how we go. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game, guys, and for the rest of the season, what's the approach? Do we? We're not tanking. I mean, no matter what people think and what they say, we're not tanking. But what's the approach? Do we? Like I said, do we go into these games and just use the method that we need to beat these teams to make sure that they don't make finals? Or do we just want to do it for ourselves? Do we tinker with game plan? Do we put Marshall down back? Do we swap players around? What are your thoughts on that? And, come the end of the season, does Richo go no matter what? Or should we clean house the coaching panel under him and bring in some serious firepower there? Because I mentioned during the week, Sam Mitchell's coming back to Victoria. He could potentially be an assistant coach to Richo. And Brett Ratton, who's a very underrated coach. He had a 50% win-loss record at Carlton. He only got the boot because Mick Malthouse came knocking, and you can't say no to a premiership coach like him. And he's been doing amazing things for Hawthorn in 5 years that he's been there. So if we had Richo, Brett Ratton, and Sam Mitchell under him, potentially, one of them could be the